My friends, I think this is a perfect time for us to now take our spiritual commercial break. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus also talked about building. In this case, it was the parable of building two houses. Listen now. Everyone who listens to these words of mine and acts upon them will be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rains fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and buffeted the house. But it did not collapse. It had been built solidly on rock. And everyone who listens to these words of mine but does not act upon them will be like a fool who built his house on sand. The rains fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and buffeted the house, and it collapsed and was completely ruined. Notice here, first, Jesus describes a wise person is one who puts his teaching into practice. The house that Jesus is referring to is our soul. The materials that we use to construct that house and to maintain it are the materials of a daily sacramental life, a daily prayer life, the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, a virtuous life. These all will help to contribute to creating a solid foundation for our house, our soul to rest upon. So that what? When the storms come, it'll still stand. What are the storms? The storms of life, the challenges that face us from time to time. Maybe poor health, maybe an unexpected diagnosis, maybe a sudden death of a loved one, unemployment, strained relationships. Those storms will blow in and out of our life. No one is immune from these storms, yet don't be afraid of them, because our house, our soul, is built strongly on a solid foundation of the sacraments, a prayer life, a virtuous life. At the same time, Jesus is warning us that just the opposite could also happen if the foundation of our house is weak. What are the materials that are used to create this weakness? Well, an absent prayer life, a lapse in the sacramental life, a life that is devoted not in service to others, but instead to ourselves. What's the consequence of this? Well, because now we have a weak foundation in which our house, our soul rests upon, well, then the storms that blow in and out of our life will shake that house, our soul, to the very core. Then, as Jesus says, the house will collapse. So whatever trial or challenge we may be undergoing, we may just succumb to it. Consequently, we must heed the words of Jesus Christ and now St. Paul, and be like a wise person. Put into practice the teachings of Christ, and build a very strong foundation for our house, our soul. Then we can weather any storm that comes our way. Next, in verses 16 and 17, Paul displays a monumental theological concept. He writes, "Do you not know that you are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If any one of you destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is holy, and that temple you are." Well, the temple in Jerusalem was still standing when Paul wrote this in 56 AD. In Paul's mind, the stone sanctuary of the Old Covenant has now been replaced by the living body of Jesus Christ in the New Covenant. Now, this is a monumental theological concept. Why? Because prior to this, all Jews believed that the true presence of God could only be found in the temple of Jerusalem. Yet now Paul is saying, no, not at all. Instead, God can be found in us. We now have become living temples of ourselves, starting or beginning with our baptism, in which the Holy Spirit took up residence in our soul to remain there forever.